Welcome back, everybody, to the Beggars Canyon Boys. This will be episode 20 again, because unfortunately our last episode was met with some technical difficulties, and I tried to salvage it, but it just wasn't happening. But that's okay. I know everybody really missed our thoughts on Tales of the Jedi: The Great Sith War. But we'll get to it eventually. We'll go back and revisit those great comic books from Kevin J. Anderson. But that's not what we're talking about today. Today, I'm very excited to be chatting with my friend Ryan again about the original trilogy, the first three movies, and their re-releases in 1997, the special editions. So when George Lucas decided, with the aid of new computer technology and CGI, that he could, quote unquote, improve the original films and change them to be more of his original vision. According to him, he could only do about 30% of what he wanted to do with the original releases of the movies. And
Nobody
now,
said 30%?
that is the quote. Yeah. And now with Lucas points out that the original films were 25 or 30% of what he intended in this article with MSNBC. But anyway, now, he can finally make them the way that they were always intended to be. According to him, he can eliminate all those horrible problems that plagued the original movies, such as ships models not being able to pass over the camera, Mos Eisley seeming so dead and not a believable hive of scum and villainy, and various other things throughout the original trilogy that are now fixed and objectively correct and better. And we're here to talk about all of that today. But before we get into the changes of the special editions, Ryan rewatched all of the original movies. I also did. I didn't watch all three all the way through, but I was clicking through and watching some of my favorite scenes. But
Best of.
Yes, exactly. But he had only seen the movies one time, so we figured it's important to watch them all again and then talk about the changes afterwards. So before we even get into the changes, Ryan, I'm excited to hear about your updated thoughts on the original movies.
Yeah, think you'll like what I have to say, Jackson, because Ryan was maybe a little hard on the first movie before, okay? I'll throw that out there. I was maybe a little hard on the first movie, but there was a lot going on. It was like it was me entering a completely new world that I had maybe a different vision in my head of what it really was. So, plus I do think, I guess it's, you have to have seen, well, regardless, I think watching the first one again after having context of the second two, really makes the first one better also. So I don't know how that factors in, but it's it was so nice and endearing to see, even though I still think some of the line delivery is bad on Luke in particular. It was really endearing and nice to see him just being kind of an annoying sweetheart throughout that movie, I was like, oh my god, he's come so far. Lukey, my little Lukey.
Yeah, I think it's crazy the difference between him at the end of Return of the Jedi and the beginning of the first movie. Why?
Even in Empire Strikes Back, I'm like, man, they must have given him some serious acting lessons in between. Or that script, I think, is just better also, so there's probably a lot more for him to actually dig into. But yeah, he's good in that one, really good in that one too.
Yeah, I agree. Well, yeah, let's just talk about the first movie first. You mentioned right before we started recording, hey, kind of forgot how big of a deal Obi-Wan was to the story and everything.
Yeah.
Any new thoughts on that first movie?
My my overwhelming thought on Obi-Wan was, aside from man, I missed him. He's a really cool character. It would have been nice to have him around longer, honestly, in the Star Wars universe. I'm not saying it's a pitfall to have killed him there, but I want to see more of him. I guess there probably is a lot more of him in other materials out there. But aside from that, my overwhelming thought was man, Alec Guinness is a handsome old man. When I get that old, I want to be as handsome as Alec Guinness is.
Yeah, he's pretty well put together for an old guy.
Yeah, he just looks really cool. I do have to say though, again, I think that the fight between him and Vader, like, now I know like Obi-Wan died there. It's still not like super clear, I think, if you're like coming into it with fresh eyes, you know? And the
Yeah.
fight also is not it's not my favorite of the Star Wars fights we've seen so far. That's all I'll say. It's not bad. I
Well,
don't think
yeah.
it's bad.
It's definitely like the least exciting lightsaber fight out of all the movies so far.
Why does Obi-Wan do a little complete 360 during that fight? He's like fighting Vader and then turns his back up to him basically. And I'm like, Vader should have killed him right there, honestly.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean, all I can give it is like it's trying to call from, the sort of traditional movie sword fighting and like samurai movies and things where there's a lot of just posing and talking, and then you do a couple strikes, and then you hit a pose and talk again. And, I mean, just because that's what it's trying to do doesn't make that, like free from criticism or anything like that. But I do think, there's the combo of it being the first time they ever tried to do a lightsaber fight, and they're using these like flimsy little sticks. Alec Guinness is a pretty old guy, and also who knows how comfortable they were, inside the Darth Vader suit at that time as well. So that's all just excuses, though. I agree. It's a little. It's more powerful in the meaning behind it rather than the actual fight itself.
Sure, and I think like it's totally fine that it's trying to like do sort of a samurai movie thing, an old style samurai movie thing with it, but it's kind of I'm sure my opinion's in the minority here when it comes to it, but it's also kind of not fine because I feel like tonally, and I haven't seen many old samurai movies, but tonally the rest of the movie doesn't really feel like that. So to try and like modularly put that in there makes it stand out a little differently, and it doesn't stand out in like a super cool way in my opinion. It stands out in like a, oh, what are these two guys doing kind of way, you know?
Yeah, yeah. That is totally fair. I feel like the story and the archetypes of characters and a lot of the design choices are very reminiscent of all those old samurai things, but the tone, I totally agree with you, and the tone of the movie and the pacing and the dialogue and the actual characters themselves, like the archetypes and like the large plot beats sort of call upon that, but yes, the actual like moment to moment stuff does not feel like that. So I totally see what you're saying. I do just love the vibe of the intro of that fight though, because the whole sequence leading up to it, just Obi-Wan being like, no, I'm gonna go by myself to turn the tractor beam off, and they're like, well, we'll help you, and he's like, no,
Yeah.
because I don't. Again, we probably talked about this on the first one, but I don't think he can like literally see exactly what's gonna happen in the future. But I think he knows that like Vader is there. He's probably gonna find Obi-Wan because he's like sensing him in the Force, and if Luke and Han or whatever are with him, then like they will be killed right away. But
Yeah, I mean, for sure they have some like sense of clairvoyance that I think is just like a feeling. Because he even says later on when, oh wait, maybe this is, I watched them all like so close together. Now they're gonna blend together a little bit. This is absolutely in Empire Strikes Back because it involves Yoda, but like Obi says, like even Yoda, like when he wants to go save his friends, Luke, save Leia and everyone, and they're like, don't leave. Um, Yoda's like, you have to stay, and he's like, my friends are gonna die, and Obi-Wan's like, even Master Yoda can't know that for sure. Like he can't see that far ahead or something like that, you know. So Yoda's like the master at that, I guess. Like he's I don't know. I don't know what we'll see else of Yoda like in the future, but maybe he's been putting the pieces on the chessboard or something, in his pacifist way, in his own unique way,
Yeah. Um, that's a good point because he's like, oh, will they die? I don't know, maybe. But and Luke like has this feeling of, oh, they're in danger, and he takes that as like they will definitely die unless I go there and help them. Uh, but he's wrong, he doesn't really do anything to help them then. Um, I guess other than like distract Darth Vader for a little while they make their escape and stuff. But yeah, it's interesting. Um, so yeah, I guess the what did you think about Han Solo in the first movie?
This is also where I think I was a little hard on Han Solo because some of the because I think I lamented about his acting previously, which seemed to be the more controversial take that I had of the first movie. Um, and I don't look. I'm not saying it's like phenomenal in this first movie. Still, I think he's like such a not stereotypical character, but like he fits an archetype pretty firmly. And so like a lot of the delivery of that, and maybe it's also just because it feels dated. And I think I said this before, but like I don't know how much Star Wars actually like created culturally that I just have just seen copies upon copies upon copies of things. So like Han
Right,
Solo to me is like he's just like all those other like tough and I don't care about anything, but I secretly do kind of guys.
right.
Um, but I think it registered better in my head, all the line reads and everything. Although again, some of them are still like, I'm like, what do you guys? What you guys? We're not in the same room when you delivered these lines. I know you weren't because you like did not respond properly with the emotional intensity that was like would have been ping ponging off the other person. That's the only thing. In the first movie, there must have been a lot of like re-recordings of stuff.
Yeah, I think there was a ton of ADR and stuff in the first movie because some of the sound got messed up and stuff. But yeah, no, I mean that's totally valid. I'm sure, it's not like the creation of that archetype of character. I'm sure there's tons of examples before Star Wars, but I definitely do think it had a big effect on like the popularity of that kind of character and the, desire to be like, oh, well, everybody likes Han Solo. Like, we got to have a handsome, you know, devilish rogue in all of our things.
Yeah. Which what's funny by the way. So before really, I don't know what I've seen that has even had him in it before. Harrison Ford, but now I've seen 1923 where he's an old man. It's old man Harrison Ford, and it was
Nice.
like funny comparing the two because he's so young in this, and but I've been
Mm-hmm.
watching him, and most recently he's like. I'm Harrison Ford, and no one's gonna touch the Yellowstone if I have a stand. And I'm like, man, he's like, I mean, I know he's aged and his voice sounds different and everything, but it's just like, it's just funny how I don't know,
You know that he's Asian?
aged.
Oh,
Is he?
I know. No, I don't think so.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, but can't aren't you so excited to see him in Captain America: Brave New World? You're
Dude,
not Steve Rogers.
I can't wait to see him Hulk out. I mean, that's gonna
Yeah.
be. Do you think he's gonna have like a like when did the Hulk speak in the first Avengers movie? Yeah, he did, right? He goes
Yeah.
no or something. Like, oh no,
Mm-hmm.
wait, that's Caesar in Planet of the Apes going.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's a little
But
different.
he talks, right? Like when he like smashes Thanos around on the ground, he's like says "shut up" or something like that. I don't
Yeah, I just
remember
can't
for
wait to hear
sure.
like the voice
Thanos, I'm in
amplification.
Loki.
Oh yeah, yeah, dude, that's actually in Infinity War, which is the third Avengers movie, not the first one. It goes Avengers, Age of Ultron, Infinity War, Endgame,
Yeah, I know.
and Secret
And
Wars is coming, my friends. Secret Wars
yeah,
is coming. Okay,
maybe.
yeah, I don't know. With Robert Downey Jr. back again. Oh my God, you think Harrison Ford will be in Secret Wars as Red Hulk?
Oh,
Oh,
because
dude, if
Red
they
Hulk will be such a good character in this upcoming one.
but dude, think about it. If they do Hickman's incursions, we could have the Star Wars universe interfacing with the Marvel
Oh,
universe. So it could be
oh.
Red Hulk Harrison Ford versus Han Solo Harrison
Han
Ford.
Solo meets Red Hulk. Oh my god, they could make a whole movie of that.
Yeah, dude, I'd watch that.
Yeah. Um. No, that's probably would be like, I'd probably find a big parking garage to step off of if that was going on. But
I'm always Wookiee. Then Chewbacca comes and fights the Hulk.
that's my secret, Steve Rogers. I love in that
Yeah.
trailer how they say those lines like, "You might be Captain America, but you're not Steve Rogers." and then he's like, "You're right, I'm not." Like that's just supposed to like inherently mean something. Like what do you mean by that? Like
Yeah.
I get it, like, oh, like, you have a different style of approaching things, and I'm sure that'll be explored in the movie, but it's just like, man, like, oh, we're just supposed to accept that that's like really powerful exchange there.
Yeah, it doesn't work also because like him being like, yeah, I'm not. There's no way, and maybe the movie will be really good and frame it in some way, but to me, I'm like, there's no way to frame that in a positive way because of the deification of Steve Rogers basically in the Marvel universe. So like, you're either just saying like, I can't see it as like, no, and I have my own ways of doing things, and that's better than Steve's, or that's going to be like the more proper tool for this whatever we're facing, I don't
Right.
know.
Right. Like I feel like even the character of uh Falcon himself like super idolizes Steve Rogers more than the other people do.
Dude, Millennium Falcon versus the Falcon.
uh
Wow, that felt good. When are we having our
yeah,
first studio audience, dude?
yeah, I don't know. We should do a live show sometime soon. I think we're
Yeah.
ready for it. Sorry, I'm just my microphone.
You're just trying your best, dude, and I appreciate that. And I think that's a positive thing. And if you can just try your best and do a little bit better every single day after that, if you chase perfection, eventually you'll catch excellence, buddy. You got this.
Kind of like shooting for the moon. You land
Yeah.
amongst the stars.
Burn up into a
Um,
fiery crisp because stars are fucking hot. The moon's not. Go to the moon instead. Okay.
But the moon is so big and the stars are all little.
That's true.
When I look, I see the moon is big and the stars are little.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I'm happy to hear that those thoughts about the first movie, but I also didn't think that your original thoughts about it were like invalid or anything, but I do agree that watching the other two recontextualizes the first one quite a lot. And I don't know, every time I watch the first one, I'm so impressed by it because I think it's so hard to make obviously a good movie in general, but especially a genre movie that is taking place in a completely different universe, and the goal is for nothing to betray that, like, oh, this is actually just like us in a studio in England running around, and and after this we're gonna go to McDonald's or whatever. Like the level of immersion into the universe that they were able to achieve already in that first movie with a pretty tight budget and a lot of constraints and compromises, and it still looks like pretty freaking good. I mean, the second one looks better, but I don't know, I just always think about that shot of the Millennium Falcon getting pulled into the Death Star, and it's like that exterior and the little loading bay and everything, and then it comes in and it's the ground and all the stormtroopers going around with the Millennium Falcon like slowly coming in. It's like, I mean, that is insane. I mean,
Roll the clip.
yeah, okay, all right, I'll play it.
Okay.
And obviously, like the final dogfight sequence and everything. Like there's just some stuff that's so impressive, and then already, like the characters are more thin than they will become in the other thing, and it's impossible to delete my feelings about the characters and watch just how they are in the first movie. But I think they do a pretty good job of getting you emotionally invested in something that could be just so silly and stupid. Like that's
Yeah.
I guess the main impressive thing to me is like there's so many like sci-fi movies and comic booky type things that have these sort of similar concepts of laser guns and spaceships and things like that are just can be fun, but I mean, I'm always just blown away by the ability to create a whole new universe right there from that first movie, and it's already pretty realized, like, from the jump.
Yeah, I know. There's a bunch of like little stuff that I guess not noticed is the right word, but like felt much more immersed in this time. Like even like smaller moments when like Luke first goes to get R2D2 and C3PO, like the Jawas selling all the little droids in that area. Like I don't know, I was like, this feels like a really cool lived-in area. They're like doing this all this haggling and everything. They're pulling back the red droid. Can you imagine, dude? Why is there no like what if version where the red droid gets I guess the story wouldn't like move forward and he would just be a farmer and he would have I guess he would have been obliterated along with his aunt and uncle. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
probably.
There's the droids save them so much, and I'm still mad that the droids like are they're kind of mean to them because
Yeah.
and if you think of this is in the first one, I think, when they're in the trash compactor and like are going to die, it's all of them are going to die right there, all of them.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's only C3PO and R2D2 who save them. They saved the universe via that action.
Yeah, you're right.
Put some
You're
respect
right.
on their names, okay?
I know.
Say them. Say their names with respect. Let me see.
Hey, C3PO, R2D2, you deserved a medal at the medal ceremony.
Okay, that was kind of like I thought at first it sounded like you were hitting on them at the bar. Like, hey, C3PO.
Hey,
Okay,
C3PO.
yeah,
Pretty nice polish after that oil bath.
yeah, oh yeah. R2D2's a looker too. You got to compliment the friend as well. That way, also, if you want C3PO, C3PO will feel a little jealous. I think this is called negging. I don't know.
Yeah, dude. Oh my god, you're like an expert. Like, I need to learn like some tactics from you. Do you do like male coaching, like life advice?
I can just like send you. I was gonna. I won't make the joke I was gonna make, but
Okay.
can you imagine if Andrew Tate was in the Star Wars universe?
Yo.
Anyway.
Well, we certainly wouldn't be worrying about all our friends and everything. We would just go and like take action and get stuff done. And we could actually be focused on training.
Oh, if we were in the Star Wars universe?
No, if Andrew Tate,
Oh, why do you say that?
he could mentor Luke instead of Yoda, and
True.
and I
Dude,
think
let's
Luke.
He
No,
would
go
be
ahead.
in Jabba's hut, dude. He'd be one of those scoundrels in there. He'd be the one
Yeah.
bringing the. What are the tentacle ladies called again?
The
They're big.
Twilix.
Yeah, he'd be the one bringing the Tatonita. He'd be sorry. He'd be the one. Did I tell you like one day I woke up and I just had that name like I must have been having a dream or something and it just like clicked for some reason, a name that like he wasn't even in those comics that much really. He did nothing in them, but like now it's in there forever. Tatonita.
Maybe, I don't want to give myself too much credit, but I think I did say his name like a million times when we were talking about this because I thought he was cool, even though he didn't do anything.
Maybe that is. This is what I was thinking when I was watching the first movie too. I was like, man, I'm enjoying this so much more this time. Jackson's propaganda has really seeped into my brain. Like,
Let's go.
yeah.
All right. So you're kind of like my test subject, and now I'm going to try and expand my influence on the larger world.
Dude, I was thinking, I was like, if you ever meet someone again who like does not know anything about Star Wars, hasn't seen any of the Star Wars projects, and you don't like this person, you should have them watch the movies newest to oldest.
Oh yeah, yeah. All the last Disney one first.
Yeah, I'm because I'm curious. I was curious. I was like, I
Holy
wonder if I
shit.
watched the sequels first, like what I think about Star Wars in general. Like without the
Yeah.
context of the other movies. And I assume you don't need them so much to enjoy those ones, right?
Um. No. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of hard to say, I guess, because I think my feelings about them are unfortunately like very tied to previous feelings about other Star Wars things. So I'd be curious to hear from somebody who was like, somebody I guess I respected their opinions about movies or whatever if they had watched those first and hadn't seen the originals. But in theory, like, I'm sure there's tons of like kids that saw those as the first ones that they saw, and they might work for them, but without spoiling anything, there's so much like fan service and like emotional beats that they try to pull from you that I feel like you would be like, what is this if you didn't know about the
Yeah,
old movies? But
gotcha. I guess I do know. I think I told you before that like my college campus was doing like a movie on the lawn thing one day, and it was one of the Star Wars sequel movies. And as I was walking by, I think I just saw like Han Solo and Chewie boarding the Millennium Falcon or something. And they were like, we're home, something like that, like,
mm-hmm.
or like, oh my god, like,
It's so like masturbatory. It's awful.
yeah.
um,
Well,
but
we don't need to talk about those today if
that
they
moment.
really strike your heart poorly.
Look, they're not all bad. It's not just like 100% bad stuff all the way through. Um, but hey, we'll get there at like 2029. Um, yeah, I guess. How about I don't know, anything else you want to share about? And I guess we can just open it up to any of the three
Oh
movies.
yes, I did want to because we were talking about sort of like the emotional impact that these movies are able to like intertwine within themselves. Um, dude, I'm not gonna lie, I was knowing the full context of things, at least like with these original movies, I was like very sad and tears in my eyes almost at the end of Empire Strikes Back when like Luke and Vader are just doing their little thing where it's like father, son, like or Luke, maybe he says Luke, I don't remember, but like it it hurts. It hurts a little bit. Again, it was a surprise to me the first time, like how much of a father son story this is, and how much it's about that broken bond and like trying to fix it again to the best of Luke's abilities. Even though, I mean, he does, but Vader loses his life at the end and gets burned.
Yeah. But I feel well. I'll address what you said. Yeah, it's awesome that final sequence, and I think the added little bit of like, Ben, why did you lie?
Yeah,
And that it's like, oh man, like it's getting a little messy now, getting a little complicated. Like the role models are not necessarily always correct. Can we trust them? Uh, is Luke going to fall down the path of the dark side because of this? Did they fumble it? And we know, like, hey, Obi-Wan already failed before with Anakin. We know that he lost one of his apprentices to the dark side. So why is he like the right choice to train Luke? I mean, he might just mess it up again. But yeah.
hey, can I ask you a question? And you don't have to give me an answer if you don't want to. But just thinking about that, I'm like, oh, I wonder what about Yoda? Has Yoda have it had any failed students? Was my question. Which don't answer that one. But do we ever get to see like other students Yoda had taught in his like 800 years of teaching?
Uh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool, interesting.
I won't say in what or to what degree, but as a
Sure.
yes or no answer, yes, we do see that.
By the way, I did get a spoiler of a fight that happens. I don't know when or where, but because one of the videos you sent me that was like these are changes in the special editions had like a recommended on the side, and this is the problem with like me doing anything Star Wars related on YouTube. Why I
Damn,
can't ever
sorry,
do
I
any
didn't think
research or
about that.
anything. No, it's not your fault at all. But it was just like it was like Anakin versus Ahsoka full fight. And I was like, what?
Eh. Yeah. Well, I won't say anything about that, but
Just struck me as
hey.
odd because like I know that the live action of her I think is much newer. And so like
yeah.
it was
Yep.
Anakin. I don't know. It was like breaking my brain a little. I was like, what are you guys doing? What's going on here?
Well, it's pretty complicated actually, but we'll get to that. It's
All right.
Ahsoka is a great character, though. I'm excited for you to meet her.
I know she was in one of the seasons of The Mandalorian, right? I don't think the one I watched, but she shows up in that show. I think I know that.
Yeah, she does. But her,
I know things.
yeah, but I won't say anything else about it. But it'll be fun when we can finally start like really opening it up. I mean, I don't know. I feel like once you see the prequels, it's like you can kind of pick and choose whatever stuff you want to watch.
Yeah.
But, in my humble opinion, I would find like the 6 original movies to be the most important thing. And then right after that would be the Clone Wars and the Rebels cartoons.
Whoa. Wow, I'm excited
as-
for those Clone Wars cartoons.
Oh,
I've
yeah,
heard
bro.
like my entire life great things about them. Like people being like, and I know there's people who like won't watch stuff because they're cartoons, which is not an opinion I have, but like I've heard even people like that be like, you gotta like watch the Clone Wars if you like Star Wars, So
Hell yeah. I mean, I think people maybe slightly have a little rose-colored glasses with them, but just because of how many episodes are not that good, like there are several just throwaway episodes, but the highs are so high. Like the good episodes are incredible, and like, oh my god, it's fucking awesome. Yeah, I can't wait to I'm excited to just rewatch all of it myself, but especially to talk to you about it. It'll be great. But yeah, enough of that for now.
Start
I don't
getting
wanna
so far ahead of myself.
put my foot in my mouth too much.
Yeah.
Hey, that starts in like 2009 or 10 maybe, so we'll get there. Not too far.
So what
But-
year were these special editions released? 1997?
Yeah, 2
Okay.
years before the Phantom Menace, the first prequel movie, came out.
Interesting.
And they even said in that behind the scenes thing that I sent you, they said, oh, and we're making these kind of large like big environments, a little bit of preparation for the prequel movies. And so I think one of the guys said that. I was like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah. But yeah, what about well, no, we talked about that. Yeah, I think what did you think about Return of the Jedi? Because I know that was like up there with your favorites, and that's probably the most complicated one to me because I think it might have the highest highs and the lowest lows out of the whole trilogy.
Yeah, I think I can concretely say now that the second movie is my favorite one. And that's probably just because that's where the characterization starts to like really, really grow. And I think the interactions they have with each other in that one, the banter they have with each other, is like so fun. And it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know, that's just like the kind of relationships I really enjoy seeing because I think I said this before too. Like every place they go to feels so lived in. Like the Hoth base feels really lived in. Like all the urgency feels absolutely correct and valid. Like the friendships between them feels right. But the third one's also phenomenal. I really, really like the third one. And I know, like, you've told me before, people like critique Ewoks, and we've had our fair share of Ewok diss here. But that's just because we were so overexposed to it. But I still like the Ewoks, man. I still think they're fun. I still think it works, honestly. And I don't think it's like so hard to be like, well, how did the Ewoks beat the stormtroopers? Even though we've also had all this exterior stuff now, be like, this is how. But still,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, dude, it was because of battle meditation from Palpatine. Uh,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't mind the Ewoks in the movie, really at all. As a concept, at least, and as them, beating the Empire, I don't mind. I do just find the third one to have some pacing issues once they get on Endor, uh, and then like the I guess Han and Leia in particular, I don't love as much in the third one. It feels a little. They're great at the beginning, but again, once they like leave Jabba's and everything, Han, I think we probably talked about this the first time, but Han especially feels a little bit like he doesn't want to be there, and he's kind of delivering. It's in the dialogue as well as the performance, just like a, oh, here we go again type of thing, or like, we always do this kind of stuff, which can be cute and fun sometimes, but I don't know. Like when they switch up, when Han is like, I love you, and she's like, I know. It's like, okay, do we need to
yeah,
do that?
yeah. I agree. I feel like his character somewhat has, and it's not like a death blow, but the most stagnation in maybe his character arc, like past where he starts to care about them, which like happens in the first movie. So like
Yeah.
after that, it's like I don't know. He's still cool and he's still a fun character, but in terms of like his trajectory, doesn't really. It's like you said, it doesn't really go too many places, or it doesn't do anything too like unique with him at that point. But I still enjoy it and it's still fun. Like that is such a it's a very minor critique of the movie, I would say, because like again, it's like I almost feel like I'm nitpicking somewhat with the when I'm critiquing like the second two movies because I do really enjoy them so much.
Oh yeah. I mean, I totally agree with you, and I feel like, you know, this. I am trying not to just like repeat stuff that I know we talked about the first time, but I just think that it's different for you now because it's been like 6 months of sitting with all this stuff and everything. But I just feel like the end is so good, and every single thing with Luke and Vader and the Emperor is just absolutely perfect. Like it, the visuals of it, the music, the dialogue, the acting, like the feeling, the scene with Luke and Vader in the tunnel on Endor before they go up to the Death Star and meet up with the Emperor is like, oh, just beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, man, so Vader's someone where I'm like, okay, it makes sense that like he dies, but it also is like such a bummer we will never. Well, man, I won't say never because I don't know how they bastardize this series, but like we won't see Vader and Luke interact again, really. Like because every one of those interactions was so emotionally charged. Like all the pleas Luke tries to make and everything is just like so. Like I said, it makes me want to cry a little bit, man. It's so good. It's really great.
I know. I mean, they have you by the end of that one. Like, again, I think the music is a really big part of it, but also just like the flow of the edit and everything, and Luke getting electrocuted and just screaming for help, and Vader looking back and forth and having to be like, man, like, it's just like the perfect culmination of everything that would have been rolling around in his head like since the beginning of the first movie. Like, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's good. Also, just on the topic of Vader, I forgot to mention in the first movie again, and I know we talked about it before, but I love Vader like flexing his force abilities on people, and then also slaying them with it. But particularly, I like the moment in the first movie where I don't know the name of the character, but it's one of the guys at the table that's like, "Oh, Vader, stop talking about your silly sorcery, your silly force sorcery," and then he's like, starts force choking him. Really, that's a really funny moment. And also, I'm like, well, what the hell was that dude thinking to even like push the buttons of Vader like that? Like, you have to. They must have some concept of like Emperor Palpatine's abilities So they must also have some like concept of Vader's abilities, right? Like you guys know what the
Yeah.
Force is, right? You know what you're Team Sith. You should know like what's going on over there.
Presumably, all of these guys were alive during like the great purge of all the Jedi and everything. Like, they're all like in their 40s and 50s and older at that table, so they're just as old as Darth Vader is, and
Yeah.
so yeah, I agree, but I do love what that scene communicates about the relationship between Vader and the rest of the Empire. They say like, oh, like keep your attack dog on his leash and stuff like that to Grand Moff Tarkin, and it's like, oh boy, like that's how they see him, as just like an enforcer, like an animal, just going in to kill people and stuff. And they're probably like, why is he even at this meeting? Like, this is for officers to talk about military strategy and politics, and he's just there. And then he like, your weapon is nothing compared to the power of the Force. And they're like, shut up, bro, we're sick of the Force. We like, in their minds, they've like conquered the Force, I guess. But
Yeah. That is a really funny way that it's framed, and that's yeah, I didn't even really think about it so much like that. But he is kind of just there to interject with things that are like useless to them, like the Force thing, and then also they're talking about how like the Death Star plans, and he's like, "We'll get them back." It's like, yeah, we know, we're trying. That's sort of like what we're trying to do. Like, calm down, Vader. Like,
and like you failed to get them back the first time at the beginning of the movie. That's what you were trying to do, and you failed. So they're probably all pissed at him because of that too.
Dude, this is. I did want to mention this in regards to the first movie. This is also something that was weird for me watching it back the second time, because the first time, like I said, watching Star Wars was like a weirdly out of body experience. Like truly, like I don't know how to describe it. Like, but it was just so strange, and so like I feel like my attention was like half split when I was the first 20 minutes of the movie the first time we watched it, because I was like in my head, like, what is everything culturally I know about Star Wars versus what is everything I'm seeing on the screen right now? How do these two things coalesce? This is weird. So I was like, my brain was battling with itself. But now I just got to watch it, and it's like, just like it was a lot better setup and connective tissue. Maybe that's also partly why I enjoyed the movie more this time, because like all the little details of like Leia leaving the message, everything. Like at the time, I wouldn't have understood necessarily the context of what that meant until later in the movie. Like the droids like getting on the little escape pod and the guy not blowing them up because there's no signs of life detected on that. I don't All those little details I thought were really nice. Like I didn't really register immediately last time.
Yeah, I mean, I totally feel that. I think that is like somewhat inevitable with anything that has been like over culturally exposed versus like what it actually is. And I still have that experience and have to like do a mental check in my brain of like, okay, like you've seen this 100 times, you know what happens, you know where it goes, but like just watch it at a moment to moment basis and see, like, experience the story as it's telling it to you, which is hard to do on something like this, which is strange. But I mean, I had that experience. I just went to the Academy Museum is having a like cyberpunk series right now where they're showing a bunch of movies that they're calling cyberpunk. Not my favorite term, but they're playing like Terminator, RoboCop, Ghost in the Shell, I think like Akira and like The Matrix and stuff like that.
Okay.
And we went to see RoboCop on Saturday, and it was in the Death Star, the big dome at the museum, which is like a huge screening room theater. Never been inside there before. I went to the museum, but I'm pretty sure that part was still under construction when I went there a couple years ago.
Okay.
But like, oh my god, an amazing place to watch a movie, truly. Like the screen, the sound, the environment, incredible. And I had that experience while I was watching RoboCop because I have seen it and I really love it. But It's certainly not something I've seen as many times as Star Wars, and my memories of it, like the first 15 minutes of the movie are so specific and setting up like all this exposition in a really dynamic and efficient way that I was like, oh yeah, like if you really just let yourself actually listen to the dialogue and let it introduce the world to you rather than just like your assumptions of like, oh, RoboCop, like he's gonna be like a robot blowing up guys and stuff. Like, uh, man, it's good. Like it's so well done and interesting. I mean, not to get on too much of a tangent, but I was just saying like I feel like that happens to me with a lot of movies that either I've already seen before, but it's been a while and I'm going back to it. With carrying my memories that I have from watching in the past, or something that I haven't seen but I've heard a bunch about. Like it's a weird thing, and sometimes hard to just let yourself watch something how it's presenting it to you.
Yeah, and to your point in regards to Star Wars with it too, I could see how for you it could also be not an issue, but like just an interesting experience watching these like original Star Wars movies whenever you do again, which I think you said you do them like once or twice a year, maybe. Um, is that right?
Yeah, probably about.
But you've consumed like so much Star Wars content that I mean even like myself watching the third one like when they were at Endor, like for some reason my mind was going like, no, this reminds me of like Mara Jade and Luke and the when they were like Sith on that planet and everything. Like I was like I'm thinking of Mara Jade right now for some reason. So I'm sure like when you watch these movies, like tons and tons of like things just that you've consumed or maybe like subconsciously even like don't even think about that much anymore. You're like, oh, this I remember this thing in Star Wars lore. Like, oh, they said that. That's kind of interesting. That ripples forward a little bit, like in this way, blah blah blah. So I could see how that would
Mm-hmm.
be an effect too.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely happens, and even beyond just like plot things, you just start to notice like, oh yeah, that's like something that a lot of future creators will try to like mine more juice out of or whatever, and like, oh, that's where that kind of nugget comes from, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, totally. I especially with the first movie because I know I've mentioned it before, but I've read the Certain Point of View book that has like little short stories about all the side characters. Um, like rewatching the first movie, you know, I know that book was written in like 2018 or something, so it's obviously well after the fact with tons and tons of content. Uh, and it is referencing, the prequels and other things and all that and pulling it together that is not necessarily even being thought of at all when they're making the original movies. But uh, now I watch like that scene we were talking about with Vader in the meeting. There's like some short stories about a couple of those officers and how they felt about that meeting and what they went to do after and how they tried to go over Grand Moff Tarkin's head to like get themselves more individual power and things like that. And like yeah, I mean,
That's cool.
it's an enriching thing mostly, but it can
Yeah.
be distracting sometimes too. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I didn't mean it in a bad way. I just sort of meant in like the because you mentioned like watching the movie sort of moment to moment. I could see how like stray thoughts could arise from other Star Wars material.
absolutely. Yeah, it happens. It happens a lot, but you just got to be like, no, focus.
Sith
Um,
happens, am I right? Can we get that on a t-shirt? Are we branding yet? Come on.
I
I had a good
I
one last time.
guarantee that that exists already.
Oh,
I'm pretty sure I've seen
darn.
that.
Come on, but
um,
whatever.
hey, and it's true. It does happen. I mean, how many times have we already seen it happen to all of our poor little Jedi in the Tales of the Jedi comics, in
Someone's
particular?
got to put the Sith down for good. How do we do that?
Hey, I mean, yeah, they try. They'll keep trying. Well, do you have any more thoughts about the movies before trying to talk specifically about the special editions?
Just one closing thought. As I've said before, I'll say it again. I like Star Wars a lot.
Yahoo!
Like
As
Star
Han
Wars,
Solo
I
might
do.
say. Okay, very nice. Or you know, as they say on Hoth, hooah, that got him.
Very good.
Yeah, I like it too. It's great. I guess we'll start by just something I'm thinking about with the changes. One of the most significant changes is the very ending of Return of the Jedi, the celebration on Endor. Now, in the original, pretty simple, pretty quick scene. We just get the Ewoks blasting their horns, our friends, you know, dancing around, enjoying stuff, Luke lighting the pyre, seeing the ghosts, and then the iconic final shot, everybody kind of posing up and smiling. But in the new special editions, we have a galaxy-wide celebration. We have a new song from John Williams. We have a slightly different pacing to the whole sequence in the edit and everything. The most significant things would be the addition of cutting to different planets that are celebrating. We see celebration on Tatooine, we see celebration on Bespin, and we see for the very first time in full live action realization a celebration on Coruscant. We see the planet of Coruscant, which is pretty interesting.
Is that
Pretty
part
cool.
of laying the seed for the prequels?
Yeah. I mean, whatever. Coruscant's in the prequels.
I just figured, I was like, they're working on like those environments, so they're gonna use the one that they've been like working on, you know?
And that one's like a brand new one too that they, you know, wouldn't really have any reason to make. I mean, not no reason, I guess, but like Tatooine and Bespin, they're already like making 3D models of those for other shots in the movies and stuff. Coruscant, I just wanted to say up top, I mean, I would love to know all your thoughts about this, but the one thing that stood out to me is, would there be a celebration on Coruscant like right away? That's the capital of the Imperial city and everything. Like, as we see in, you know, lots of other media that takes place after Return of the Jedi, most of the officers that survive are still like, no, the Empire's not gone just because the Emperor died. Like, we're still trying to make it happen, and it's disorganized and they're fighting for power and everything. But I imagine in the capital of the Imperial city, sure, I'm sure have tons of civilians that do not agree with the Empire. But I thought of like, oh, wouldn't that be cool if they like showed Coruscant in a way where it's like, oh, some people are like, but it's still like, hey, get back in your homes, nothing has changed. Like,
Yeah.
hey, everybody, like that might be kind of an interesting route to take for it.
They should be
but,
like, there should be riots in Coruscant that we see at the end, although that would like
yeah.
be leading too much into something else, but like,
But it seemed like an organized, like, you know, government
Yeah.
planet-wide celebration.
launch our fireworks, everyone, blah blah blah. Yeah, because I could absolutely see how like citizens would be emboldened, but you're right. There is no way they would just be like, shoot. I guess we're
Yeah.
we're out of here. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like no, like there's one thing. Like fiction and history teaches us, people holding on to power will do like anything to keep hold of that power, like regardless
Yeah.
of how lost their cause is. And even I'm not even saying the Sith causes that loss there. I don't know what happens next.
No, and I understand the celebration on Endor, absolutely, because that's where all the rebels are then, and
Yeah.
our characters, and they
And
did.
Ewoks party hard.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and they're not eating human flesh.
Now remind me, because you watched all of this more recently. Oh, yes. Sorry. I didn't mean to just blast over that. You're correct. I'm glad they didn't eat Leia and instead had an outfit in her size ready to give to her. No, people complain about that, but it's like they could have just made it right then. I mean, what? It doesn't matter. Also, but whatever. I always forget, and I'm forgetting right now. But you just watched these, so you probably remember. In the original version of the celebration sequence, is there any like drumming on the stormtrooper helmets and stuff, or is that all new?
Oh no, I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I thought so. I thought that was new for the new version.
Yeah.
You got all those changes in that final sequence, but my favorite one is that we get to watch Wedge Antilles dance around the fire with the Ewoks. And if you look in those wide shots of the Ewoks partying, the big bonfire in the middle, it's all Ewoks and one little rebel pilot dancing along with them. And that's our boy, Wedge Antilles.
Just reinforcing Wedge Antilles being cool in your eyes, I assume. What a
Absolutely. He didn't meet the Ewoks at all until after the Death Star exploded. So presumably, he's coming down there to meet up with the rest of the rebels, and they're like, "Hey, by the way, like, we were kind of caught up in this conflict on the ground here with this indigenous population of aliens here. Like, they're cool, and." I like to imagine that in his head he's like, "Hey, I don't even need you to explain all that to me. I'm ready to party with them."
Dude, he was probably like waking up the next day saying "Noopa Noopa." Like he probably stayed there. I bet he stayed on Endor.
Yeah, I think so. And there's a nice little shot too added in the ending where Luke gets to give Wedge a little hug. That's not in the original one either, but
no. Well, yeah, that's sweet.
Yeah, because he deserves his frickin' flowers. He was pretty important in blowing up the second Death Star along with Lando and Nine Nub. Yeah. So, but let's open it up. What were your thoughts about these changes? I couldn't find any video that was just the 1997 changes, and there's more to come in 2004, more to come in 2011, and more to come in 2019 when they get added to Disney Plus. So, yeah, but we tried our best to look at them in the most spoiler-free way. I sent him clips of like the biggest full sequences of changes, and then a list of all the written out more minor changes, and then a pretty beefy behind the scenes video going into at least the public version of the intentions behind all of this stuff.
Yeah.
What did you think?
The like documentary video you sent me especially upset me as they were talking through all the changes and whatnot. And I guess I understand now why like these edits are a controversial talking point among Star Wars fans. I don't know, man. There's a couple things that are like, okay, that's like fine, but also I feel like nothing really like enhances the films much greater than they were previously. And also, I feel like it like I'm gonna be such a hater right now, but like the mere fact of like trying to what George Lucas is trying to do and like the way that he rhetorically explains it, frankly, it annoys me and like is anti-artistic in my head. Because like to some degree I'm like it was actually really cool that like you had limitations and you found yourself being super resourceful and finding major wins within Star Wars previously, and now you're just like, I don't want to say shitting on it, but it's like you had the Star Wars souffle, you put it in the oven, and you took it out and you're like, oh my god, the souffle's perfect, and then he put it back in again. And I don't know what happens to souffle when I don't know if it dries out or it just explodes, but that's kind of like, that's what happened. He ruined the souffle. You can't cook a souffle for too long. Don't do that.
I agree. I think I will, to give him a little benefit of the doubt, if this is your absolute, baby, obviously the main thing he's ever made. He's, done a lot of other stuff with his life, but this will always be the most famous thing he's ever done. And I'm sure he's seen, especially the first movie, over and over and over again. And I'm sure there would be all these little things that would start to drive you crazy. And you would remember like how annoying it was on set because you wanted it to be this way and it just wasn't working. And so now, I can finally like go back and fix that. Okay. But my main issue, I have two main issues with this. The first thing is, if you are going to make all these changes to a movie, fine, it's your movie, you're allowed to do that. If you want to re-release it as, here's the special edition, great. Maybe people will not like it as much as the originals, maybe some people will. There's not really anything wrong with that. The problem is that you have made the original versions now completely inaccessible.
Yeah.
By normal means. I mean, we have our undisclosed methods of watching the original versions of the movies, but I mean, every other movie ever that I can think of that has something like a director's cut released of it, you still have the original version pretty easily accessible to watch, too. And this is, I'm sure there are other examples that I don't know about, but as far as I know, this is the main thing where, like, he's trying to make it so that you never watch the original versions again, and this is all you have. And that's pretty maddening. And then the second thing is that a good movie, is so challenging to create a pace that remains engaging and pulls you through the story and keeps you locked in. And I know maybe you might not have had as much of this experience because you didn't watch like the full movie as the special edition, but John Williams talked about it in the behind the scenes thing. You add like 5 or 6 seconds to a sequence of a movie, that kind of throws off the whole edit, the music, the pacing, everything.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, I didn't really notice these things, but if I watch the original versions and then I watch the versions on Disney Plus, there are these moments that have the added, shots of the Falcon flying in over Cloud City, or in Jabba's palace, added shots of, more aliens and things like that, like that really throw off the whole vibe of the movie, and you start to get this feeling of like what's going on now? Like we're just kind of like sitting around here looking at stuff. Like it's so not essential for the story of the movie to see like ships taking off and landing every single time. Like we get plenty of that in what you do have. There's some awesome shots of ships lifting off and landing. Like we don't need more of that. I don't know.
Yeah, and I would say even in like smaller things too, like them trying to amplify how deadly the Sarlacc pit was. Like to me, it looks worse. It looks less cool. It almost looks less deadly, and it just, I don't know. A lot of the stuff reminded me of, and I kept thinking about it. It was like a viral story years ago about a woman who was trying to do some art restoration on like a famous picture of Jesus, and she just made she like painted over the face and made it look like really, really bad. And I was like,
yeah.
I feel like he, to some degree, did that to this movie. And again, I got it in the condensed sort of like, I got to see clip after clip basically of the changes that were made. So maybe if I watched it like the special edition and those edits made in the full movie, it wouldn't like stand out as much to me as like, what are you doing? But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just like, what does this actually add to the movie? And maybe there's a few things here and there. Like I would even understand making a remaster version. They talked a lot about how the land speeder shots, there was like this pink blob underneath it because of the green screen technology of the time. Editing out the wheels just created like this little blob underneath the land speeder. If you want to go in and like take that out, okay, fine. Like, that's like a remastering of the movie. Maybe, deleting little flubs in imagery here and there, or if maybe you could see some wires, or like the thing they talked about with the transparency on the inside of the cockpit of the snowspeeder. Sure, like, fix that if you want. But beyond that, like, you're making it worse. You really are. Like, when he's talking about the Dewbacks, holy shit. I mean, this is an insane thing. But he's like, oh yeah, and like originally we just had it where when they walk in the cantina, it could just like move its head around a little bit. But now, like, it's breathing, it's going around, it's like its tongue is going, its eyes, everything. It's like, what? Why? Because that's supposed to be in the background. That we're still supposed to be looking at our main characters walking into the building. And like the Dewback is a cool thing as like set dressing to make the world feel more alive and have, some elements of realism to it. And I like what he's talking about like originally, we just want to have like some random biology in these places to give it that real life feeling. And it's like, yes, that absolutely works. But now, you've got your original shot with an obvious, not amazing looking CGI thing in the background, that all that's going to do is pull your focus on like, what's all this motion going on here in the background with this thing. And like, I don't know. It's a little delusional to me.
Yeah, I think it also, I mean, I'm kind of like, I don't want to definitively say I'm like against making changes, like any remastering changes to an original movie from the time. But again, like I have to emphasize, like it being limited by the resources of the time, I think is like intrinsically kind of a beautiful thing, and like
Yes.
like the creativity that was spawned from that. And so to go back and like replace a lot of like practical things with CGI, which dates much quicker than practical effects. Like practical effects still. Usually you'll watch an old movie with practical effects and you'll be like, okay, like I know that's an effect, but like there's still a lot of charm to that, and it's still like somewhat like tricks your brain into being like, oh, that's real. But CGI,
Because it's tangible in the world and
Yes.
humans are interacting with it. Like,
yeah,
Sorry,
I
go
think
ahead.
it helps lift everyone up too. Yeah, you're right. No, that's a good point. But like the CGI just feels like so. I don't know. It feels, especially since older CGI like dated so poorly. Like it feels gross to some degree. And it feels like to me, and maybe I'm wrong here, but like that doesn't feel like Star Wars now. And maybe I don't know if I'll dislike other Star Wars stuff that has like CGI like that too. But just like it, I don't know. It's like not the Star Wars that I knew for the brief period I guess that I've known it. But still, like I've been immersed in this, and like
yeah.
we've talked about the feel of Star Wars and how some things sometimes don't feel Star Warsy, and to me, like the CG, it doesn't quite work, and it makes things feel like more Looney Tunes than Star Wars, I guess.
Yes. I totally agree. And I guess to give him a little credit, I don't think maybe at the time, and that's like top of the line CGI at the time, and they are developing new technologies for CGI in-house at Lucasfilm to make these things that will then go on to be, and this is the time for like CGI really starting to be a big thing in movies. I mean, you had Jurassic Park and Toy Story coming out in 1995. Huge like steps forward in computer animation. That's and it's on the brain of all these filmmakers, and I think it was so hard to make those movies, and so much effort and stress and time spent into very little things that may have not turned out exactly how you wanted, that I can sort of empathize with the idea of, oh, like, well, this is so much easier. Like, this is the future, and at the time, you don't have the hindsight of, well, 20 years from now, this is going to look like garbage.
Yeah.
And you probably could trick yourself at the time into thinking, like, this looks real. This, like, looks just as real as the practical effects. But I mean, I now that we're so overexposed to so much CGI in pretty much every single genre movie that has any kind of spaceships or aliens or really even just action in general, like it's very frustrating. And yeah, I agree. It's taking away the beauty of those limitations. Like, aren't they have to be aware that, like, since the beginning of art, like, limitations breed creative solutions that end up being more visually, just it's a visual medium, but whatever it is, end up being more satisfying for the audience than just if you could literally do whatever you want with the push of a button. You lose the artistry of it. Like, even that simple shot of the exterior of Obi-Wan's house, and in the original you just see the land speeder with the back of it off camera because it's being held up by something and it's touching the side of Obi-Wan's house to keep it stable. And then in the new one we get a big wide shot of a CGI cliff and the house and the land speeder. Oh, it doesn't have to be touching the house anymore. Wow. Like, who gives a shit? It was a beautiful, like, well-composed shot that you had to think about and be like, oh, does this look, like, visually appealing with the aspect ratios and all that sort of thing? Like, that's just kind of gone out the window. Oh, all the X-Wings cresting around the side of Yavin before the big battle. Amazing. Let's just paste, like, 40 more of them in the background now. Well,
yeah. Or all the stormtroopers they added for that, like, Han Solo shot when he runs out, and there's like, let's have a bunch of stormtroopers. Why?
Not only is that weird, it makes the scene not make any sense because they would just kill him then.
Yeah,
if
I know.
there's
That's what I thought.
literally
Like,
100 of them. Yeah. But whatever. I'm sorry. I'm rambling about little things.
No, you're good, and absolutely, and like to what you said about, like, I get that, like, they've got new technology, they've got new toys they want to play with, but, like, to me, and I'm not saying you were disagreeing with this, but it's like, I don't know, it's like if I found my I didn't have a diary when I was a kid, but, like, I found a diary that I had when I was a kid, and I wanted to publish it maybe, but I was like, oh, let me go back and, like, intellectualize all the thoughts, though. So, like, because I was so silly as a kid, and, like, I don't have any of that. It's like, yeah, but then you lose, like, the adolescent charm of it. Like, I can have that be its own thing, and I can save my intellectual thoughts maybe for something new, Like,
yeah, exactly.
Why does that have to? Why do I have to paint over it again? I guess is what I'm saying. I don't know. It's like, so to some degree I get it, but to the bigger degree I'm like, nah, this ain't it, guys.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think that's a great analogy for it because I don't know. I think even the way that George Lucas is talking in there, it's like, dude, you've lost the point of all of this. Like, I get it that you're so deep into the business and computer technology side of everything now, and I don't know. Again, I feel like if you wanted to make a remaster where you sharpen up some of the effects and you remix the sound, like the sound mix or whatever, like, sure, go for it. But beyond that, leave it alone, man. I mean, no one complained about that stuff at the time. That was all, like, amazing. And you're talking about how in the behind the scenes of the first movie, invented new technologies of miniatures and stop motion for those movies. Like, why would you want to hide that? Like, it's I don't know.
I find it hard to believe, like, I mean, it must have solely been like a George Lucas thing, like you said, like watching it again and again and getting annoyed with the little minute details of things, because I don't believe at all for a second there was anyone, like, clamoring for changes or anyone being like,
no,
this because again, like, contextualizing it to the time, like, we know this was pretty freaking impressive.
Yeah,
like,
everybody loved it, dude. Everybody loved it and still loved it in the 90s, like how it was. Nobody was going like, oh, Cloud City felt too claustrophobic. Like,
Yeah. Or just seeing them do that scene with like Han Solo talking to Jabba the Hutt, and they were
I
talking
was
about the
about to
issue of
bring
like,
this up.
well,
Yeah.
how was he gonna go behind him with the tail there? So we had him step on the tail, and I was like, dude, my soul, I think a little fragment of it shattered off there when I watched that scene, and even just seeing that Jabba is terrible in and of itself, but like it makes things not connect well. Also, it's like what you said earlier. Really, you change things, it really ruins the pace of everything.
Yeah, I mean that there's a reason why that was a deleted scene in the original movie because it's a repeat of the exact conversation he has with Greedo at the table. Like they pretty much are talking about the exact same stuff, and I get that like, oh, this is actually Jabba here now, but like I don't know. I feel like yeah, the momentum of that sequence of them talking to Han about leaving, and then the spy guy telling the stormtroopers where they are, and like going to the hangar and everything, like that builds to the sequence where oh now we're shooting and we have to quickly get away, and that just like you know adds a whole 3 minutes of dead zone to the building of momentum of that whole sequence. And that yes, I was about to bring up that because that is one of the larger changes. You know, obvious thing first, the CGI of Jabba the Hutt looks terrible. It
Like I said,
is.
Looney Tunes esque, very much so.
He's also about 1/3 of the size that he is in Return of the Jedi too, because they had to keep him around the same size as the human actor from the original thing. And it's like yeah, like you said about the thing of him stepping on the tail, it's like that's a problem that you guys created for yourself. That
Yeah,
this didn't have to be in there in the first place. And then George Lucas talking about, oh, it connects it to the third movie, like because we see Jabba there, and we want to be reminded of that in the first movie. It's like if you're paying attention to the movie, they talk about that a lot in the first, not like a ton, but in the first two movies. That's kind of Han Solo's whole thing is that he's on the run from Jabba the Hutt, and like the second movie focuses on that a lot with Boba Fett and chasing them down and everything. So it's like, isn't it cooler if he's this talked about threat and we don't see him at all until the third movie when he actually matters and is doing like big stuff for the plot and everything? Like you build to the reveal of finally showing Jabba the Hutt, and let's obviously, like we all know what Jabba the Hutt looks like. Most people who would be watching Star Wars for the first time now would already know what he looks like.
yeah.
But if you didn't, hypothetically, if you didn't, that would be a cool reveal when you finally see Jabba and you've heard him being talked about throughout this whole thing as like this crime gangster and this big threat, and then boom, there he is. I mean, all this does is make him look stupid, and you can so easily see the digitization of Harrison Ford like zoop zoop like over the back of the tail.
Yeah, it still looks bad as the thing. Like they didn't really fix the problem even. Like
And when he steps on the tail, you have Jabba going like,
yeah.
like what? Why are we doing that?
Almost like one of those what are those dolls? Like the peach ones with the blue eyes and the red ears, or you squeeze them.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
are those called? Stress
I
doll?
don't know what those are called, but those, yeah, it is like that.
Yeah.
And yeah,
but
like you said, just freaking Looney Tunes silliness in it. Like,
that's how I felt about the band too, singing.
oh, that's the worst change in
What
the
is her
whole
name?
thing.
Is it Lupa or something?
Sice Noodles,
Okay, yeah, I wasn't even close. All right. Yeah, that
the
one also
green,
like
the green lady.
with the big lips.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Atrocious.
sorry, I just wanted to make sure we were talking about the same person. But yeah,
No, yeah. Absolutely horrible.
yeah, terrible.
Again, yeah, the documentary you sent me, man, like it really soured me to George Lucas, like time and time again in that. Just like everything he said, I was like, it's kind of like you said. It's like, do you understand like why the further movies were enjoyed? Like, do you? It's starting to feel like it got so far away from you that you don't get it anymore. Like, I don't know, it's very weird.
I know.
Or
I'm
it
trying
just
to-
been
oh,
like, yeah,
yeah.
we thought it'd be funny to have like the musical number in there. It's like, I get it to some degree, like, but also what?
I mean, they were talking about how, oh, this makes it much more of like it seems like a fun place to go if you're like, the scum of the universe or whatever. No, it doesn't. The original scene, that is exactly what we said when we watched the movie for the first time. And the original song is way cooler. The Lopty Neck song versus the Jedi Rock song. Lopty Neck is way better. They're like, oh, the puppets couldn't move the way we wanted to. They move just fine. They look pretty good.
Yeah.
And the whole vibe and the pacing and everything and the atmosphere of that, we said right then, hey, Jabba's Palace seems like a pretty cool place to just chill out and have a drink. And if I went here and Joe Yowza started screaming at me while I was trying to just chill, it's annoying. It's like so stupid and annoying.
And the caveat that we said it was cool until at least I said it was cool until I saw the slavery that was going on there. So
yes, exactly. We said like, oh, it would be cool, and then you would start to notice some things and be like, we should probably get out of here. But
that's a much better effect too. Like that works better too.
Yes, that's probably the intention of it in the original movie, is to draw you in. Like, oh, Jabba the Hutt's cool, and then you see some bad stuff, and you're like, oh, no, and that's like how I don't know, all the best like gangster stuff does that, where you think like, oh, like Tony Soprano is like kind of a badass, and then he'll do something and you'll be like, oh, like actually you're like a disgusting person. And this just is so silly, and Joe Yowza, the Yuzum, who they talk about, oh, a new character that we couldn't do in the original. He literally like swallows the camera in like a music video style, like the camera like zooms into his like big open mouth and everything, and it's just so stylistically different than everything else in the whole movie. And then to like make sense of it, they just cut to like different shots of Boba Fett like nodding, and like Bib Fortuna like covers his face because he thinks it's all scandalous, and it's like, what are we doing? Like, what? I don't know. It's so pointless.
I also don't remember if they do this in the original. I mean, like, I just watched it, but like the cuts to Boba Fett were also really funny. Like, did they do that in the? I can't remember if they did that in the original or not. But it's like Boba Fett just walking around, and like obviously he's not expressing, but like that mask.
Yeah,
it's like this is weird.
They do a little bit, but I think it again, like we were talking about just the pacing of scenes. It works in the original version because, first of all, that Jedi Rock or the Lopty Neck song is a lot more just chill and slightly in the background while there's like a lot of talking amongst patrons and different things going on. And then they will cut to Boba Fett just kind of like lurking in the background a little bit. But again, that's just to like set the scene of like, oh, he's there. He's not like a partying kind of guy. He's just kind of chilling and observing. But here it felt like, oh, well, we don't have enough money to like show the band animated the whole time, so let's just keep cutting to Boba Fett because people like him. Like,
yeah, actually, you're probably right. That's absolutely what, because there was more Boba Fett. I noticed, at least in the in that clip, like, and I was like, I basically watched him do a loop around the room. I was like, why are we like tracking Boba Fett right now?
Yeah,
like,
it's very strange.
It's like, I get it, he's not into it. Like, you don't need more than like one shot of Boba Fett to do that.
It may be in the original is like maybe 2 times they cut to him, but not more than that. It's so okay. Yeah, I think the Jabba the Hutt scene and the Jedi Rocks musical scene are probably like the biggest full sequences of change. But there's so many little things. And I mean, just looking at the list, you feel like you're reading like a manifesto of a psychopath. Like, why? But whatever. This is a minor one, but it really bothers me. In Empire Strikes Back, there's this very minor change that maybe I know you read through this list, but maybe it didn't even stand out to you. And maybe I even meant to send you a clip of this, but it's it's something that you wouldn't even realize unless you were like really familiar. Maybe you would have realized it. I'm not saying like, oh, you specifically wouldn't have noticed this because you've only seen it twice, but it's so minor that like I didn't even realize this until like last year. After Vader and Luke fight, and Luke gets away, and Vader is going back to his shuttle with the stormtrooper escort and leaving Cloud City. In the original version, he goes, "Bring my shuttle." And that's all he says as they're walking through the hallway. And you can tell he's pissed. Luke just got away. He failed in his goal there to seduce Luke to the dark side and bring him to the Emperor. I mean, that's his whole goal for the whole movie. And he continues to fail throughout that movie over and over again. And that's like the last straw where like, yeah, you know, Vader's not going to like start screaming and swearing at people, but you can tell like he's angry in that moment with the tone, and like the officers are like nervous and they're like, oh, he's going to snap. In the special edition, it changes to, "Alert my Star Destroyer to prepare for my arrival." Why?
Yeah, that's a good question. Why?
I don't understand why. And to me, the only effect that has is making it seem like he doesn't care about anything that's going on. And he's just being like, oh yeah, all right, let's like go back to the ship and do that. Like, it's not a big deal, but why would you do that? You had like you had such lightning in a bottle there with a scary little Vader moment of like, ooh, he's still keeping his composure, but like he's about to snap. And now it seems like he has no emotions at all. Like, so lame.
Can I ask you, when the special editions came out, do you know like what the immediate response of people was? Like, did this come out in theaters? I forget.
Yeah. I think people were pretty upset. I mean, obviously, the main thing that got talked about like crazy at the time and is still referenced all now is the Han Solo and Greedo sequence. Okay, sorry, I'll be right back.
Oh, sure. Once again, Jackson cannot hear me. He knows not what I say. He knows not that oft I have digged up the graves of dead men and placed them upright at their dear friends' doors. Just as their sorrows were beginning to be forgotten, have I carved on their skin with my knife, as in the bark of a tree, in holy Roman letters, "Let not your sorrows die, though I am dead." I have done 1,000 dreadful deeds, as willingly as one would kill a fly. And my only regret is that I live not to do 1,000 more. Phone time! Check my phone. I'm pleased with myself.
Doing a little solo podcasting while I was gone.
Yeah, don't worry about it, man.
I think I saw a little sound effect.
When the Jackson's away, the Ryans will play. That's all I'll say.
Fair enough. Okay, so the main thing that people were at least vocally upset about at the time was the whole Han shot first thing, which, you know, I feel like has been talked about to death, so we don't need to
we
spend
talked
too
about
much
it, I think,
time.
even the first time we saw it, because I was like, I know about that controversy because it's like such a famous controversy of it. And I was surprised. I think I remember the time I was surprised because I was like, that was like very clear. And like there shouldn't have been anything that really aroused any interest in changing that there, but whatever.
Right. And they don't talk about it in the behind the scenes thing, even though it's a pretty big change. I think maybe they knew that people would not be too happy about that or something. You know, it's pretty selective, like what they decide to speak upon in the behind the scenes thing, and then they kind of want to keep other stuff like under the radar, I guess, or maybe you won't even notice if we change this little dialogue thing here.
Well, from the first movie, I guess, like that scene, I would make like a slight change to it too. If I like had my way and could go back and do my own special editions of it, I'd have Han Solo reach across the table and strangle the life out of Greedo. Just
grab his head and smash it on the table.
Yeah, pull a little John Wick in the cantina.
Hell yeah.
Come on.
Hey, that would be fun. Kind of tonally friction, some tonal friction with the rest of the movie.
Exactly.
Tonally abrasive. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. They continue to change this moment over and over again with every release, but how it is in the
That annoys me. Because I was thinking, I was like, what? Okay, if he's doing this now, and I know he's done others, but I'm like, when does it stop? Like, when are you done tinkering with you? That's what I find so annoying. Ugh, it's like that's frustrating to me. Like, bro, move on. Like,
I know.
it was well received. It's a great movie. Like, they're great films. Like, just let them breathe the way that they were. Like, don't try to breathe something new into them that is like just poisoning them.
For real. And then like once you start doing this, it opens up the floodgates, and you can't really shut Pandora's box again because he just neurotically continues to tweak and change them every few years, with each new, DVD, Blu-ray release. All this, they keep changing, and this is the most significant batch of changes right away at the beginning. There's a couple major things in later releases, but this is, the biggest suite of overhaul changes. But the Han and Greedo thing in particular is like, I don't know, like he at first has it where now Greedo shoots first and he digitally moves Harrison Ford's head to the side like that to dodge it, and then he shoots him. And then next time they do it, it's like, oh, okay, well, we're still going to do that, but we're going to make it faster. So, like, there's, like, a little bit of plausible deniability or whatever. It's like, what?
Mr. Fantastic there, moving his neck.
Yeah, seriously. And if you slow down the footage, like, that's what it looks like Gumby bending. It's so stupid. But, like, then you start to correct issue. Like, people were so upset about that they go back and they tweak it a little bit again. It's like, just don't do it in the first place. Like, you created that problem for yourself. There's no solution to that problem. It's a fake problem that didn't need to exist to begin with. Like, it's so weird.
Yeah, if you're going to continue to tinker and reception to something was bad, I'm not saying, like, let the audience lead what you think is best artistically, but, like, also you already made your artistic choice in the beginning, so, like, and it was well received, so...
Exactly.
Why deviate from that? And then once you know the deviation I'm sure I don't know how he receives critiques. Like, I don't know if they just are just bouncing off him and he's like, whatever, I don't care, I'm gonna do my own thing, or if like any of that actually resonates with him. But I don't know. I would think it would bother him more that people are annoyed about these changes than him not making the change, like him watching his movie without the changes. But I guess
Right.
overall, no, it doesn't.
I mean, that's what it seems like, at least at this point in time, because, like we said, I don't think anybody else was telling him these things of like, oh, Cloud City doesn't really feel very alive. Oh, Mos Eisley isn't effectively communicating like that it's a hive of scum and villainy. Like, I don't know. The celebration at the end isn't galactic enough. Like, I don't understand. It's just very odd. And I don't know how he felt about the public response to this, but I think everything I've ever heard, even from people talking about it at the time, it's all pretty negative. I don't think anybody, I mean, I'm sure there are some people, because some people feel some way about everything, but I think the vast majority of people saw this as a negative thing.
Dude, did you see when Han Solo stepped on Jabba's tail?
Yeah, that was so funny.
Yeah.
Dude, did you see on Coruscant there's a stormtrooper being crowd surfed in the big crowd, and he makes the Wilhelm scream.
Whoa, that's awesome. I do just want to mention on the topic of stormtroopers really quick. Again, And sorry, this isn't about any changes in the special edition. I just want to say it's really cool seeing Palpatine's Crimson Stormtroopers, like the Red
Oh
Guard or
yeah.
whatever they are. Like I like those guys a lot. I want to see more of them.
Hey, we got a comic book coming up real soon.
Nice.
That is pretty cool.
Very nice. Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
not a lot
love
of
those
Stormtrooper
guys.
love in the comics yet. We haven't gotten any like dedicated stories to them or anything.
No, which I know they exist. Stories about individual stormtroopers or like a squad of stormtroopers and stuff. So they'll be coming soon. But you're right. It's interesting that they haven't really focused on that yet.
There's a lot of toys to play with, but that does seem like fertile ground for some good storytelling.
Mm-hmm. Um. Oh, there's some fertile ground. All right. Uh. There's one addition that I actually do like, and that would be the scene on Yavin where Luke meets up with Biggs Darklighter and they have a little reunion. And he's like, "Hey, the stories I gotta tell you. All right, well, we'll talk about it when we get back from the Death Star." And then Biggs dies during the Death Star battle, and they never really get to talk. I don't think we need a moment of Luke like crying about that after the battle or anything like that. Obviously, you're more swept up in the emotions of saving the entire galaxy from the Death Star. Uh, but I like that moment because he does talk about Biggs at the beginning of the movie, how he already left to go to the academy and blah blah blah, and then he sees him there, and it's like, "What, Luke? I'd never thought I would see you here." I don't know. I think that's
Yeah,
a
it's a nice reaction for sure.
scene to re-include.
Yeah. I think that also though is like I don't know. That's a smaller thing that feels like it doesn't deviate anything too far away from like what we were already doing, I guess. So
Yeah, yeah.
it almost like could blend in well, but yeah.
And I mean, and it blends in a lot better than most of the other stuff because it was shot back then. It was just a deleted scene from the movie. And they do fucking add a CGI rebel pilot walking around in the background for God knows why, but it's at least not as like glaringly obvious as like the Jabba the Hutt thing or whatever. And it blends with the rest of the movie a lot better.
Are there more deleted scenes from this original trilogy that will get added in later on even? Or is that like are we good?
There are more deleted scenes, but I don't think they get added in later
Okay.
on. But
All
we
right.
do get. I've been holding off on talking about those deleted scenes just because the public didn't have access to them until like the DVD releases in 2004. I'm pretty sure is the first time
Yeah.
we could see
Okay.
all those deleted scenes. So we'll talk about them then. But I don't think, at least as far as I remember, I don't think any new scenes get added. There are one or two scenes I can think of that get pretty significantly altered, but in the future,
Now those are scenes
um,
other than the ones that have already been significantly altered though. So it's like
yes,
additional scenes. Okay, interesting.
yep. Um, Specifically, the most infuriating one, and I won't really get into it. But the scene in Empire Strikes Back where Vader talks to the Emperor over the hologram, and he's like, the son of Anakin Skywalker is alive, and he's also the guy that blew up the Death Star. And Vader's like, "Yeah, I already knew that." To himself, but to Palpatine, he's like, "Oh, very interesting." Such a cool dynamic that the two of them have, keeping secrets from each other, and Vader's aware that Palpatine is like a manipulator and everything.
Yeah.
Very cool. That scene gets changed
Interesting.
for the worse.
Okay. Does it cut stuff or does it add stuff? Can you tell me that, like in regards to making it better or making it worse?
Yeah, it's not even spoiler, so I'll just tell you what it is. They use Ian McDermott, who plays the Emperor in Return of the Jedi. They reshoot the scene so that it's him on the hologram with Darth Vader instead of like the weird chimpanzee face that they have for the Emperor in that one, which I that makes sense why you would do that, but still just leave it alone. But that part is not that frustrating. If you just wanted to re-record and have Ian McDermott saying all the dialogue and put his face on the hologram, okay, fine. But they change all the dialogue, and it makes it a different dynamic between him and the Emperor, which is frustrating. But we can talk about that when we get to it. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Any other thoughts on this special edition?
No, I will just say I feel like I've been mean to George Lucas this episode, but I still like George Lucas. He was really rubbing me the wrong way everything he was saying. So,
yeah,
I appreciate what he's created, but like, I don't know, when to move on, I guess. Maybe that's the takeaway, the big life lesson we can learn from this episode.
Yeah, definitely. He's just a little too interested in this new technology of CGI and everything, and it's something that infected a lot of filmmakers at the time. William Friedkin, one of my favorite directors, who did The Exorcist and The French Connection and Sorcerer and To Live and Die in L.A. Great movies. He would say stuff around this time or a little later, but still, when people asked him about like, oh, what were like some of the complications with The Exorcist, and like if you could go back and like change that, like what would you do? And he literally, like, not joking, is like, I would have done it all with CGI and everything would have been on a green screen and blah blah blah. And it's like, man, was it just so hard and so stressful and annoying to do these practical effects that like it just breaks your brain a little bit when you see like, oh, it could have been so much easier. But he literally has the opinion of like, they should use Blu-rays at the movie theater instead of film, because then there will be no tearing or little lines popping up and things like that. And it's like, don't you know that like we really like that about stuff on film? Like, it's awesome to have that sort of like texture to it and everything. Like,
that's what I was gonna say. I feel like it's like a no, and maybe it's not, but like I feel like it's a known thing that like people appreciate the merit of those practical effects and things. Like, we understand that like that's hard to do. That's why it's more impressive. It's like, oh my god, you made something. That's like you said earlier. It's like you made something that was just like an imaginary thought in your head tangible in this movie, and that actually like physically work within the universe. Like, and that is a feat to be proud of. And like, even if things aren't perfect, like people will give you a lot of leeway for that and still be really impressed by like what you were able to do with it. And it will look good still. It'll look better.
Yeah, I know. And like you said, it will almost never age. Like, the effects in Star Wars of the spaceship battles and everything, like, yes, you can see like maybe they're not as dynamic as something that could be created with CGI now, but there's so much more focus to them, and the eye knows what to look at, and it's not overly busy and all this. Like, I don't know. It's well, what we're getting real close to the prequels now. Does this make you a little worried for those?
Frankly, it does. It does make me a little worried for them. I also know that like who directed the second film again? I'm so sorry, I keep forgetting his name.
Oh, Irving Kershner.
Yeah, that film is so good. He does such a good job with it. And I know like does George Lucas direct all three of the prequels?
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's a bad director or anything. I honestly don't even know if I can make that judgment call entirely yet. But I don't know. I'm worried. I am worried.
Yeah, I mean, understandable. I was getting worried about it too, just based on what they were talking about and like knowing what George Lucas was interested in, and the little hint of the guy being like, yeah, we're kind of developing this new technology for these landscape shots to get ready for the prequels and stuff. And it's like, oh boy, here we go.
Yeah, well, we'll see though. I'm absolutely gonna go into it with an open mind, and you know what? Regardless, I'm gonna be excited to see a time when the Jedi's were thriving a little bit harder,
Hell
um,
yeah.
because that's what's cool about the comics we were reading, the Tales of the Jedi comics.
Mm-hmm. And I will say, I know you're gonna go in with an open mind, so I won't. I'll try really hard not to say too much about it, but there's good and there's bad, and there's gonna be some things that are really bad, but hopefully we can see the magic that is still present there.
I think I've said it 1,000 times. I'm excited for this Palpatine garden scene. That's really if we don't get that, I'm gonna be really really disappointed. I don't
All
know if I'm
right.
gonna like Star Wars even after that if they don't showcase that.
Well, we'll have to see. We'll have to see.
Okay. Maybe a
Uh,
special edition release of the prequels will add it in.
yeah, yeah, right. Well, dude, I mean, it's not like as major as it is to the originals, but still, he does change them when they come out on DVD and stuff too. It's
Oh, really?
crazy. Yeah,
The prequels
like
too?
a little bit, just a little
That's
bit.
funny.
But
Now
yeah.
that doesn't happen with the sequels, I assume. There's like no way,
I
right?
don't think so. I don't.
Okay.
Well, he's not allowed to touch those at all. But yeah.
Okay.
Um. Uh. So anything else before I talk about what's next?
Nothing else.
All right. So that was our thoughts about the special edition. On our next episode, episode 21, it'll be a bit of a grab bag of the late 90s. We're still building up to prequel mode. Um, we got some comic books. We've got Crimson Empire. I was looking at the E from Empire while I was reading Crimson out loud. Crimson Empire, that is the miniseries that focuses on Palpatine's Royal Guards. So that will
Oh.
be next episode.
Wow.
Uh,
Funny I
as
brought
well-
that up, and we're doing the next episode.
I know. I knew it was coming soon, but I didn't remember that it's literally the next thing. So that's cool. Also, there's a New Hope special edition, a miniseries comic book, just a new adaptation of the original movie. So we could probably skim through that one, but I still think it would be interesting to look at and really lock in those story beats of the first movie. And then we've got a big video game, Star Wars Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2, baby. The sequel to Dark Forces, obviously. Kyle Katarn is back.
Whoa.
Then we've got a behind the scenes thing, Anatomy of a Dewback. It's just really more about the CGI technology that they were using at the time rather than caring about a Dewback specifically, but it gives you insight into the process of making these CGI things that they did for the special editions. And then we also have a book release, the annotated screenplays, which might be hard to track down, so we'll see how much we talk about that, but I think those would be really interesting. It has, obviously, the screenplays annotated, so we can see, what were the original things that were supposed to be in the movie, and then what kind of concessions had to be made from budget or other limitations. And once again, like, maybe if those are really hard to find and whatever, we don't talk about them, but I think those could be interesting to look at.
For sure.
Yeah, but that's it for next time. Unless you, I'll edit this out, but unless you are unable to easily play Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2, then maybe I'll add some more comics to that episode, just so.
What is it on?
It's on PC. I had to do some pretty involved stuff to get it to work on my Mac. You have to buy it on Steam, and then first of all, no pressure to like spend money on a game or anything like that. But if you really felt like it, you'd have to buy it on Steam, then download Steam CMD, which is the command line version of Steam, trick your computer into thinking that you're running Steam on Windows instead of Mac. Then you can download all the assets of it through this other thing called Porting Kit. Well, no, not Porting Kit. That's a different thing. I can send you all this info if you want, just to see if you feel like doing it.
I can try. Maybe it's not on like PlayStation or something that I can just buy it there. Man,
I know. And the only reason why, like, really, I will not be disappointed if you're just like, this is too much and I'm not going to do it. Like, I totally understand that, and it's not a big deal. But it is just a really cool game, and you'll still get a lot out of it from just like watching a playthrough of it or watching all the cutscenes.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't mind watching it either too. I feel like in the past when I've had to watch things, it doesn't really affect them too poorly, you know.
Yeah.
The episodes, that is.
No, I don't think so either. And you know, it's obviously a lot to do all that and then have time to play through a whole like 10-hour video game before the next time we record. So it's not a big deal if you can't do that. But I really like the game a lot. I just beat it over when I was home for Christmas and stuff. It's pretty fun, really charming.
Okay, cool. Did you make a video on it?
I think so, yeah.
Nice.
I got all the footage, so I might as well. But yeah, if I do end up consolidating even more, which I might do that now that I'm thinking about it, we might add the sequel to, or never mind, a new Shadows of the Empire thing, Shadows of the Empire Evolution, a little follow-up to stuff we were doing, and then also a manga adaptation of A New Hope that was released.
It'll be fun.
Which could also be probably a skim and just looking at the art and stuff, but could be cool to check out.
I can see it already. We can talk about it. I don't need to read it. Like, I already know what that looks like.
Okay, you're saying all manga art style looks the same? Actually, there's
Nope.
a lot of subtle nuance between different artists, even though I understand from a layman's perspective, all these kind of character designs would look similar, but really, it does change from project to project, so.
Okay. All right. Checkmate, Jackson. Checkmate. You got me.
Hey, how about a new strategy? Let Ryan win.
Is that a quote? Is that a Star Wars quote?
You know Chewbacca at the holo chess table?
I don't remember. Yeah,
Well,
but does he say that line?
C-3PO does, yeah.
Oh, okay.
You gotta watch the first movie again, man.
Hey, man, I just watched 3 movies in like 3 days here. Come on.
Hey, I appreciate you doing that. I know that's a lot, so thank you for doing that.
Yeah, my precious little time that I have, Jackson.
But hey, wasn't it time well spent? Didn't you enjoy it?
It was. I did enjoy it, and I got to watch it like on my monitor's right here, and I watched it like this instead of like your place further away. Not saying that's bad, but like I got to see like a little more details in this at the screen. I got to see like the little scuffed marks of Vader's helmet and stuff. That looks cool. Like all that was neat.
Nice. I mean, yeah, that adds to it. And even the difference between his costume in the first and second movie. In the first one, his eyes are a lot more red, and on certain shots, you can even see the real eyeballs below. And then in the second one, they black them out. Yeah, little things like that. It's kind of fun. Well, hey, thanks for talking Star Wars again with me. I'm excited to continue the journey. And man, I wake up sweating thinking about how you're going to feel about the Phantom Menace when we get there. So, no, that's not true, but I do worry about it a little bit, but I'm excited too.
I wake up sweating going, "Tat don't need a, tat don't need a, tat." So,
well, only, I guess if you have to talk to your therapist about that, I don't know if I can help you.
I like myself the way I am, that included.
Okay, well, I'm happy that you have that positive outlook.
Yeah, why did you laugh at that?
It's just funny the way you said it, okay? I like you the way you are too.
It's funny that I have self-love, something that many people in the world are missing.
Well, maybe it's just something that I really struggle with and find it to be some elusive, unattainable thing that I'll never achieve peace with myself. So I kind of, as a defense mechanism, just laugh it off and say, oh, that's funny that someone else, they must be joking if they say that because it's impossible to actually love yourself, right?
Hey, I guess you need therapy. You were projecting Jesus.
Well.
Womp rats out.
Star Wars.